This is part 2 on how to break down the numbers when looking for rentals.
You got to find out what your mortgage is going to be, right? Because that's how you're going to find out how much profit you're making. So price of the home we said was 200. Down payment, let's say, is 20% because it's an investment property. Which, remember, guys, there's a lot. Actually, I like to show the power of turning primary residence into rentals. So let's go with the 5% down, which is more standard. And what this will do is this will factor in this is all kind of guesstimated, but it's pretty accurate. Property taxes, home insurance, they should do around 1% property taxes. But I've seen super high property taxes, so you got to check that stuff.
I would check that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's usually listed.
Yeah, these days it's pretty easy to find, like on Zillow or anything. If there's an HOA, which is pretty common, since we're going new build, it's almost guaranteed there's an HOA. In my part of town, for a house, that can range between like 50 and 150 if it's gated. So we'll go 100. And then mortgage insurance, you always pay mortgage insurance if you pay less than 20% down on the property. So got to factor mortgage insurance. So that puts your payment at $1,367 a month, right? So now we know that. We go back to the calculator. We're not buying a property unless we can make more on rent than our mortgage. And you got to figure out what you're comfortable with on that number. I've watched Bigger Pockets webinars where their number is $100. If I make $100 a month, I'm buying it. And I buffer mine more than that. I usually want $300 to $500 a month on mine. But that also means I'm buying less properties. You know, some people, you can buy the property for cash flow and you can buy a property to build equity. It depends on, I diversify. I've bought properties strictly because there's a lot of equity in it, but the cash flow is not that good. Some people buy properties because it profits. It's a $800 mortgage and they're making $1,500 to $2,000 a month on cash flow. That's great cash flow. And I diversify that. Yeah.
So I remember that book that you recommended, The Automatic Millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about you don't really know when you buy whether it's going to be this or that. Is that true? Would you say that's true?
Well, yeah, you can never predict future values. Yeah. You're just you're trying to increase your odds by choosing a good area, an area in the path of progress. Maybe it's close to another nice area, so it's going to kind of get gentrified or absorbed into it. You know, things like that. You look for those kind of clues. You look for good school districts. You know, you look for stuff that could increase your odds. But yeah, you can never predict the future. So that's an average over a long period of time, 3-4%. There's years where my properties in Phoenix, or almost all the properties, went up 12% in 1 year. The last 5 years, properties have gone up at least 7 or 8% every single year. So there's time frames where they go up really, really fast. And then maybe there's a bunch of bankruptcies this year because of coronavirus, and it slows everything down to 1%, and the average is somewhere in the middle. So, but that's why you got to buy properties for long term. So I go back here to rental income, and I want to make, at least $300. So $1,367.
1,600.
And I do it pretty basic. In this portion, I'm not doing all the what if this happens, repair costs, blah, blah, blah. That's why I don't like the $100 mark, because that's not enough in case something happens. That's why I want $300, $400, $500 in case there's repairs and stuff. So let's just say $1,750.
So you're putting that number there so you make it. How are you validating that number? Craigslist, Rent-A-Meter or something?
Mortgage calculator.
Or is there like an MLS?
Exactly. So here's what I do. My process is I check MLS comps because there's also rental closings. So that makes it a rental comp. In the MLS, it'll show you what rentals have closed for in that market. So that's my first step because I have access to it. So I take advantage of that. But a lot of rentals don't go in the MLS. That's one thing to know. The majority of sales of real estate go through the MLS. A large majority do. Rentals, it's not the case. A lot of people put their listing out on so many different platforms, even just Craigslist. I know property managers that strictly just use Craigslist. So but go ahead.
What's the MLS?
Multiple listing service. That's where realtors list their property for sale. And the reason that's so powerful and why everybody does it is because syndications. So the MLS used to be a book. You used to walk into an office and you used to flip through the book of like houses and choose which one you like. That got put on the internet, and that goes out to what we call the portal. So when I set you up on a real estate portal, you're getting direct feed emails from any house that gets listed on the MLS real time. Now the syndications, what they do is that's all the other websites, and there's thousands of them, that once the MLS gets it, it feeds it out to all those other websites. So the whole world is seeing your house on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Homes.com. All those websites are getting a feed from the MLS. And in the past, that feed used to be really old. So the power was there was a lot of power in getting first to know about the house. You get to go look at it before it got to Zillow. Well, they've gotten a lot faster. So now it's pretty much real time. So that's how that's working. And then to your point, Miguel, so I check the MLS. That gives me an overall sense. Then I check Rent-A-Meter. That's a good one. But you can only do 3 before having to pay for that subscription. So, I think it's like $100 a year too.
Can your MLS get it within, probably get it within like, I don't know, half a mile of the location? Or does it go by zip code? So
comps are different than sales comps. Rental comps are different than sales comps, because a sales comp, I have to think like an appraiser. You can only sell your house for what an appraiser says you can if the buyer's getting a loan. So you got to think like an appraiser. Oh, it has to be in the same subdivision, has to be same features, blah, 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 blah. So you got to think differently when you're doing the comps for rentals as opposed to sales. Yeah.
So you have a bigger circle, you're saying?
Actually that's a fair comment. You can go out a little bit further. You have more competition per se.
How much further would you say? Not more than like a mile?
I think,
or are you still saying
honestly,
zip code?
I keep it. I'll sometimes go. I try to keep it under a mile. I just put myself in the seat of like a renter and like try to think like they would think, because you don't have that restriction of an appraiser. That's the biggest thing. Cool. And then the third thing is, once you build not a reputation, but a relationship with a property manager, when I'm getting close to buying the property, I'll send it over to them and get their opinion on what they think it'll go for. Because, well, you're going to use their services. Don't do that. Like, you got to be careful not to take advantage of them, because you'll burn that bridge. If you got to use their services, obviously, build those relationships. But it's just another layer of protection to see their opinion. Now, rental income appreciates as well. So that's what's super powerful as well. Like, that cash flow increases. So it's usually a lot more. It's usually like 7%. So I would go 4% on this, and that would still be really conservative. Okay, expenses. Property taxes. So what'd they say? 172. So plug that in. Annually. Insurance. Whoops, I gotta do the math on that, huh? Actually, let me change that. That's monthly. With this home insurance, $50. That's a little bit low. I'm just going to go up just a hair. Okay, repairs and maintenance, 5% because it's a newer house. Vacancy, a lot of people do 3%. I'm going to go 5%. Be conservative again. CapEx, it's a newer house. We talked about that. Long-term expenses, newer house. We're going to go 5%. That's pretty conservative. And then management fees, they have a percentage here, even though I pay $40 per unit, which is super cheap. Most people charge 10%, but $175 a month is pretty high. Let's see what 5%. Let's go 6%. $105 a month, that's pretty standard. Electricity, 0, because I make the tenant pay for that. Water and sewer, a lot of times, even in a duplex, you'll pay the water because there's only 1 meter for the whole property. But let's say it's a house where they pay their own water, so 0. HOA fees was $150. Garbage is part of the water usually, and just other breakdowns. Okay, we're gonna keep this where they have it. Sales expense, that's pretty high. I'm gonna go 7% on that. That's when you do sell it. And then annual expense growth. Okay. Guys, I really gotta use the restroom. I'm gonna leave this right here. I'll be right back. Sorry. Run through this. So a lot of people do return on investment, which basically you take your net profit, which is, how do you know your net profit if you've never owned the property? A very basic way to do it is take 11 months of rent. And that basically gives you 1 month rent of for cost for repairs. But if it's like a $400 per month rent, well, then your repairs are probably going to be more than 1 month if something happens. So you got to kind of factor it in and paste on the rent. But that's just a generic way to run the number really quick. So 11 months of rent being your net profit divided by what you paid for the property. But what I like to do is what they do here, COC, so your cash on cash return on investment, which is how much cash did I put down to buy this property? And what's my return on that cash? Because that's money out of pocket. And so that's the number that I look at. And I try to keep it, 10% or higher, 12% or higher would be great. So if you look at this here, right, it's 6.3%. It's really not that good. This really isn't that good of a property. But why I love real estate and why you should get comfortable taking risks with real estate is because real estate is actually very forgiving because the way it appreciates, because rental prices appreciate. And if you look at this, how all these numbers typically go up at a very conservative rate, we put very conservative numbers. In 5 years, you'll be making 18% annually. So your bad investment turned into a good investment because real estate's very forgiving. And once you have 20% equity in the property, you remove that mortgage insurance, you remove that $139 a month, your return goes up even higher. So that's exciting. And then this is probably the most exciting, right? So year 1 to year 30, it shows at a very conservative pace. Remember, because real estate can go up a lot faster than this. These are the values, right? Each year. So when you have this paid off in 30 years, that one property could be worth somewhere around 650 or higher, loan balance paid off, which means and your renter paid that off for you because they're the ones paying all the bills. You're making a couple $100 a month the entire time. So, and rent prices have gone up. Look at how your cash flow changes through the years because of the moves you make. $42,000 a year on one property. And if you have, whenever you feel like cashing out down the road, you can sell it for this amount. So when you have multiple properties, you can do multiple things. You maybe have 2 or 3 of them paying you this much every year that you live off of. That's your retirement. You're good. But then you have maybe another 1 or 2 that have increased in equity a lot, and you sell a couple of them off, and now you have $1 million sitting in the bank, and you have this cash flow. Like, this is such a amazing retirement plan. That's it. That's the gist of it. Wrapped it up.